All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Patreon exclusive spoiler talk for the Stephen Graham Jones novel Mongrels, which we just reviewed in booked episode 306.
Yeah, one of the things I want to talk about, and again, talked about how much great practical stuff there was, kind of the climax of the book, right? So Darren goes missing. He had gone to work for an exterminator company, just didn't come home from work one day. He's missing. They feel something's wrong. They start investigating. And what winds up happening is, holy shit, and they talk about it. It's foreshadowed throughout the book, really, about how animals won't come around, like the smell of wolf and wolf urine and stuff, and how they go and pee around the outside of the house to keep varmints out. He works for an exterminator who knows that he's a werewolf and basically are keeping him and extracting urine from him to have like the best exterminator business ever.
He uses pesticide or whatever.
It's like it's like almost James Bond villainish. Although we never really see the person. You know what I mean? It's not like there's the character appears, the one who does this, but it's not like we see him as the mastermind villain.
Right.
But it did. It felt like a weird, like bizarro James Bond story where we've kidnapped somebody for their urine, to dominate the world of pesticides.
That was really good. And the setup, the actual building was well thought out too, because it used to be. Oh man, he did a really great job because it used to, before it was their warehouse for the pesticide company, the extermination company, it was like a lube shop or whatever, like a oil change place or whatever.
Absolutely.
So they had all this, area underneath the regular floor, and that's where they were holding him and extracting the urine and stuff. But because they had all these menial jobs in the past, one of them was familiar with, working in an oil change place. So they had the thought to look down there. So it was all just really well tied together. I thought it was really good.
That's actually when we're introduced to a character too, kind of late in the book, and her name is Grace Ellen.
Yeah.
Who brings some comic relief and this great fucking, like, we think we know everything about werewolves, right? Because we've got grandpa's stories and we've got all these things that are handed down from Libby and Darren to the protagonist. And fucking Grace Ellen just fucks their shit up because she actually like knows remedies for things that they thought were uncurable and understands how birthing. I guess it's a spoiler talk when you talk about it, right? The whole thing is a werewolf has a child with a woman and the woman dies. There's no other way around that, right?
Yeah.
Wrong.
Until the end of the book.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, all you got to do is this.
And and she's great because she's like, how have you survived for so long? Like, you guys don't know shit.
Yep. Yeah, that was really good. She was good. And like the whole, because one of the big things that happened was earlier in the book, Darren, like in his childish kind of goofiness had, and I'm going to go ahead and say that I think that Darren in a lot of ways is a reflection of Stephen himself, because Darren at one point acquires like a silver throwing star, like a throwing star made of silver.
Yeah.
And in playing around with it and goofing around and showing off, cuts his finger. But as a werewolf, silver is a real problem. So like his finger is basically fucked. Because they don't know of any way to fix it. And he eventually bites it off and spits it at someone, like in a kind of a swaggering, cool moment in the book. But then toward the end, our protagonist gets cut by, what's her name?
Grace Ellen.
By Grace Ellen at one point. And there's this whole process of her healing him from the silver wound, and you realize, oh, there is a way to so she did a lot of that stuff. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, she turns a lot of aside, but I'm just gonna take a stab. You never owned a Chinese throwing star, did you?
Do I sound like the type of person that?
Man. You see, you missed out. You were born just a few years too late. Like man, when I was
like my brother had that stuff.
Yeah, when I was like in 8th grade, man, Chinese throwing stars and karate shoes. That was the thing. Yeah, I think that's what they were called. They were weird. They were like fucking ninja shoes, man. You could buy them for like $4.
Like the one toe separate than the others.
No. These were one full shoe. No, I know what you're saying, but they looked like that, but they had no sole. I mean, there was like a thin strip of plastic on the bottom because you paid $4 for them. You had to like figure out what like your European/Asian shoe size was. So it was like fucking 40 or something. Like yeah,
I mean, did they look like slippers? Because I just
a
searched
little
for.
bit like slippers. Karate shoes come. What would karate shoes pull up?
I mean, something that looks like house slippers.
Yeah, I guess they kind of looked a little bit like house slippers.
Do you think some guy was just like, I'm gonna bump up the price on house slippers and fool all these kids?
Dude, they were four fucking. I remember they were $4 because they lasted you like a week, and then you had to go back and like buy another fucking pair. Because at $4, as you can imagine, they didn't hold up very well. Um, if we're done, or we're not done talking about Grace Ellen because they're still the probably the one of the funniest parts of the book that she is, and she's probably she's the butt of the joke, I guess. Not that she's funny. At the end where they hook up, right? Darren and her are like hanging out, and he's like fixing her door and not coming home, and they're starting to get the idea that they're kind of a couple, and it's a throwback to the hot dog eating contest, right? There's a lot of talk when Darren first goes missing. Darren had talked about being able to win a hot dog eating contest by wolfing out, getting the crazy appetite, right, and then immediately switching back, and he could eat like more hot dogs than anybody because he'd be so just famished. So at one point, where they even go and check out this hot dog eating contest, that maybe Darren's there, like he's on a bender. But at one point, he's kind of implying that there's stuff going on between him and Grace Ellen, and Libby says, "I don't want to know." His response is, "She should enter a hot dog eating contest," which is just hilarious and a little out of character for Steven, I think.
I saw that and I was like, "Whoa, Steven," but that was a hilarious line. That was definitely a funny line.
Yeah, great stuff right there.
There's one thing. All right, so there's one thing that this is towards the end of the book too. That I want to get this out before you do. The graffiti that he writes in the bathrooms as they travel around.
Oh yeah, I forgot all about that.
So one thing you find out is this is toward the end of the book, which means that you've been reading all these different like places they've been, and they've been traveling a lot over the course of a decade. And then toward the end, he just throws in a line where he says that he'll carve into the bathroom stalls in the like rest stops or wherever when they're traveling, the quote, "When I am a werewolf, I will wear jean shorts." Awesome.
Yeah. I'm thinking that has to be a reference to Teen Wolf, right?
Do you think so? Do you think it's a direct?
I don't know. And there were so many things, and in the acknowledgments, he's like, "Yeah, I took a piece of this and I took a piece of that," and there were so many things that I read that like kind of tickled the back of my brain, like they sounded really familiar.
Yeah.
There's like his hair was perfect from the Warren Zevon song. That was super easy. But there were other things in there where I felt like maybe I'd heard that or seen that or heard that quote in a movie or something. So
I'm just gonna say that a quick search for Teen Wolf jean shorts does not come up with what you're expecting. There's a lot of teens and a lot of jean shorts, but not a lot of wolf. And I'm probably on a list now.
Yeah, I was gonna say you totally just went on a list. Yeah, ultimately, this book is I hope that this book is used as a frame of reference for future werewolf writers, because there is some great stuff in here that was touched on that could be expanded into whole longer sections of story. I think
I want to talk about, because you kind of brought this up in the regular review, but I want to make sure that I'm on board with this, because you have a suspicion that you and Steven both looked up how to become a werewolf.
Yeah.
And were we talking about the girlfriend at the time? Or no?
No, I did not mention. I said there was a character that was looking. Yeah. I didn't specifically say who it was.
So the kind of girlfriend in high school is the one that is the character in the book who is obsessed with becoming a werewolf. And there's this like moment. She's in the book for a good chunk of time, but there's this moment where he goes to her bedroom for the first time, and she opens the door and there's just wolf stuff everywhere. And she's like, I imagine it like she was kind of like arms out, just spinning in the middle of the room, like with her eyes closed, like, just.
I don't think you had to imagine that. I think that was actually a line in the story.
Okay, good. Then I read that right. So and it was just this like imagery that to me was like, this is the closest to Twilight that the werewolf genre should ever get, is like this one girl who wants to become a werewolf. But like I had that little spark of like, oh, this is like the Twilight moment for werewolves. But then you and Steven are wanting to be werewolves, and I'm like, oh, maybe they had their own little Twilight moments too.
We may have. There's the one about rolling around in the sand or something, and I swear that sounded so familiar. Like I'm pretty sure that I had read that in some kind of occult how to become a werewolf book. I was maybe like 12 or something, but
How much of this stuff did you try?
none, because you know what? I lived in Chicago. And you
It's
know
not
that doesn't
practical, yeah.
yeah, a lot of things aren't practical when you live in a city. Yeah, I that the only so that was the one. I don't know if I would even call it the one continuity. Maybe I don't even know if that's the right word. Error was her grandfather, right? He made silver bullets, fake silver bullets for people, but he understood that werewolves were real. He's the one who armed her with all this information. I find it hard to believe that she would be allowed to put up a shrine to werewolves after Grandpa had basically kind of warned her off of them. Now, ultimately, he was a werewolf,
Right.
but she didn't know that.
I didn't find it weird.
Yeah, that one a little bit was a little, kind of like you wouldn't be allowed to worship the thing that Grandpa's been warning you about. It's kind of like putting up posters of Satan in your bedroom when you're a teenager.
When your father's a pastor or whatever.
Right, yes. I guess I should have qualified that a little bit. Yeah.
I mean, I guess most parents...
That's probably okay, but yeah.
Satanist parents are like, hey, more posters of... Get that poster of Jesus off the wall.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Replace that with Beelzebub. So.
Do you want to talk about... I've got two things written down that we haven't talked about yet.
Okay, let's do it.
There's the scat collector and the bear.
Yeah, so the bear... Yeah, I like the bear stuff. But I almost saw that coming, in that, it was mentioned kind of like fighting other animals and stuff. So the scat collector was super interesting, though, because that was the woman who's right. So this goes back to, and one of the things, I don't know if it came up or if we really adequately discussed it in the podcast, how what was happening, we'll call it today, related back to the flashbacks pretty closely. So... that one was a little more distant, right? Because it's a throwback to why they originally had to leave. When Grandpa died, he killed the state trooper, and now here we are, whatever's 5 years later or whatever at the time. Where the woman, what was she, a botanist, biologist?
She's a biologist, yeah.
Is basically tracking down a werewolf that killed her husband, is what it comes down to. But she's doing it by studying animal dung.
Poop.
Which Darren decides to fuck with this woman. Which is just brilliant.
That was great. It was just, oh, you know what? There's this woman who's collecting poop. Let's put a little, let's go to the dollar store and buy, confetti and stuff like that and put it in there and just find the weirdest stuff to put in my poop.
And not to put it as poop, to put it as poop during manufacturing. So he's, eating glitter.
But then the impact of that is hilarious too, because it ties into our main character figures out that the reason that she is able to track them is because, first of all, Darren, in kind of a good Samaritan way, is pulling roadkill off the road when he's in his truck driving around. So she basically just she figures out that every time she finds this glittery poop, it's when there's no roadkill nearby. So she'll find a stretch of road that has no roadkill and then get out and start just looking for something reflecting in her flashlight. So his stupid prank is something that could just get them in trouble, but he just keeps doing it. I think because he's naive to the fact that that's what's happening, but he's just so in love with this whole idea of the prank that he's doing. This is funny as hell.
Yeah, there was just so much great stuff. And again, I'm still just fascinated by the process that they develop. Just leaving food outside, I mean, there's so much good stuff. And yeah, the French fries thing was awesome. Just the whole dissertation on how there's a quote I didn't do because I just had too many, but it said French fries is something we had to become accustomed to. You know, we didn't come up with them through the ages. Like it's like kind of a newer development.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, just good stuff, man. Like the bear thing. I think was just the bear thing. The reason I thought it was so cool was because there was a few different parts of the book that emphasized, kind of in a very subtle way, just how clever these werewolves can be when they're in a sticky situation. So the whole bear situation was her way of getting Darren out of trouble and making it look like, because the Jewish cemetery thing, there's just so much clever stuff going on. Like, so like one of the things that they talked about as lore was that werewolves used to eat the recently dead. They would dig up the graves and eat the recently dead because they were fresh meat. Meat is meat, and like, you know, there's no pride in it. You know, just you gotta find a meal or whatever. But then modern embalming processes and stuff made it so that eating the dead wasn't something that you could do anymore. Except that someone figured out that the way that, you know, the Jewish faith buries people or prepares the dead doesn't involve this embalming process. So it's like open season. So suddenly Jewish cemeteries are like a goddamn buffet. And he runs across someone, Darren runs across people, other werewolves, you know, grave robbing for a meal, but then gets discovered by the police and arrested. And then just to get him out of trouble, she takes this bear and makes it look like the bear was eating the kid. Oh, it was just so clever. But like, there's a few other times where, like at the end, when they save Darren and she's getting revenge on the pesticide owner, the pesticide company owner, and she's, you know, flushing him out of the woods. You're thinking just to kind of kill him and have revenge on him. And the main character figures out that she's herding him toward the highway, so he'll get hit by a truck and it'll be an accident. Man, that stuff was so clever.
That's what I said. I think he hit every base, and you know the whole, you know, the way that you know, Jewish interment is done, you know, is genius.
Yep.
There was something else when you were talking about that too. That what was it? Nah, never mind. Whatever it was, it was a fleeting moment in my brain, and it's gone. So much good stuff here. Yeah. That just, I can't say enough good things about it.
I think we're done spoiling the shit out of this book. What do you think?
Spoiler alert, it ends eventually.
There is an end to this book, but
there is.
I'm praying, fingers crossed, that Stephen does come out with the history of werewolves video like he did for zombies, because that video was amazing.
I don't know. I think he kind of gave us that, didn't he? I mean, I don't know. There were a couple different legends.
Well, I'm talking about like the origin of I guess the wolf story. Because like when he did the zombie thing, it was all like, these were the first instances of zombies, and this is when zombie stories changed, and you know, that type of thing. I guess that's
true. Yeah. I guess if you're looking at it from the story standpoint, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, that'd be fun. All right. Thanks for tuning into the spoiler talk.
Yeah, there's one every 6 months or so. Some books just aren't worth doing it for. Some there just aren't. There isn't anything to talk about. You know what I mean? Yeah. You kind of get through the story and that's it. That doesn't mean it's not a good book.
Yeah, Roberge's memoir, not really much of a spoiler content that we could have talked about there.
No.
So
I agree.
Yeah. All right.